Hello there! Welcome to Darla's Book Club. I'm Darla. This is a club for everyone and anyone ready to discuss books, and more books! I love books, and I'm sure you do too. Traveling to unknown lands, delving into our history, admiring poetry and language? Oh, but I'm getting carried away. Sometimes, the stories around how books are created are even more fascinating than the fictional tales themselves. And sometimes, we're curious to learn about a book, whether we've read it or not. So with that, let's get to today's Darla's Book Club discussion. Today, we are going to talk about the Da Vinci Code. Who doesn't love a good mystery? That's exactly what author Dan Brown has created with his Robert Langdon novels. Unraveling this mystery could take some time, but rest assured, here on Darla's Book Club, I'll be helping you to discuss and maybe even solve the Da Vinci Code. Author Daniel Gerard Brown was born on June 22nd of 1964, and he is an American author who's best known for his thrilling novels, which include the best-selling Robert Langdon novels, 2000's Angels and Demons, 2003's The Da Vinci Code, 2009's The Lost Symbol, 2013's Inferno, and 2017's Origin. Brown's books are treasure hunts that typically take place over a 24-hour period and feature repeating themes such as art, cryptography, and conspiracy theories. Brown's books have been translated into 57 languages and have sold millions of copies over the years. 3 of his religion-themed adventure stories, The Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, and Inferno, have been made into movies. I love books. I could read all day, but learning the facts surrounding them is even more fascinating. Let's continue. Dan Brown was born in the town of Bedford, which is located in the United Kingdom. Brown began his education at Exeter's public schools until the 9th grade. Brown grew up on the campus of Phillips Exeter Academy, where his father, Richard G. Brown, was employed as a teacher of mathematics who wrote textbooks from the year 1968 until his retirement in the year 1997. Constance, his mother, trained as a church organist and learned student of what is known as sacred music. Religion-wise, Brown was raised as an Episcopalian and described his religious evolution during an interview in 2009. I was raised Episcopalian, and I was very religious as a kid. Then, in the 8th or 9th grade, I studied astronomy, cosmology, and the origins of the universe. I remember saying to a minister, "I don't get it. I read a book that said there was an explosion known as the Big Bang, but here it says God created heaven and earth and the animals in 7 days, which is right." Unfortunately, the response I got was, "Nice boys don't ask that question." A light went off, and I said, "The Bible doesn't make sense. Science makes much more sense to me," and I just gravitated away from religion. When questioned during the same interview about his then current religious views, Brown said, "The irony is that I've really come full circle. The more science I studied, the more I saw that physics becomes metaphysics and numbers become imaginary numbers. The further you go into science, the mushier the ground gets. You start to say, oh, the less you understand about science, the more it seems like there is a spiritual aspect to science." Brown always had a keen interest in puzzles and secrets. His love of them comes from their constant presence in his home life while growing up. He was always fascinated by ciphers and codes and how they acted as linchpins in terms of tying together the music, languages, and mathematics in which his parents had made their profession. As a child, Brown spent countless hours working out crossword puzzles and anagrams. Both he and his siblings took part in elaborate treasure hunts that were dreamt up by their father on holidays and birthdays. For example, one Christmas, Brown and his siblings didn't find any gifts under their tree. Instead, they followed a map with codes and clues throughout their house and even around town to find their holiday treasures. Brown's relationship with his father is said to have inspired Jacques Sonnier and Sophie Nouveau's in The Da Vinci Code, as chapter 23 of that particular novel was incentivized by one of his boyhood treasure hunts. Wow, I didn't know all that, did you? It's incredible to learn where ideas come from and how they end up where they do. Let's keep this book club moving along. Upon graduating from Phillips Exeter, Brown headed off to Amherst College, where he joined Psi Upsilon fraternity. Brown sang in the Amherst Glee Club, played squash, and was a writing student of visiting novelist Alan Lelchuk, who wrote the books American Mischief, Miriam at 34, Shrinking, The Beginning of My Own Ending, Miriam in Her 40s, Brooklyn Boy, Playing the Game, Ziff, A Life, and Searching for Wallenberg. Brown spent his 1985 school year abroad in Seville, Spain, where he took an art history course at the University of Seville. Brown graduated in 1986. Anyone who's read the adventurous tales of Robert Langdon knows that they are riddled with historical fact and Christian themes. As a result of this, his books have been known to generate controversy. According to Brown on his website, his books aren't anti-Christian, though he considers himself to be on a constant spiritual journey. Brown claims that his most popular novel, The Da Vinci Code, is just an entertaining story that promotes spiritual discussion and debate. He even suggests that the book can be used as a positive catalyst for introspection and exploration of our faith. During a vacation in Tahiti back in 1993, Brown read Sidney Sheldon's book, The Doomsday Conspiracy, and became inspired to write thrillers. He began work on Digital Fortress, setting much of the story in Seville, where he studied in 1985. Brown also served as a co-writer on a humor book with his wife Blythe, entitled 187 Men to Avoid, a survival guide for the romantically frustrated woman, under the pseudonym Danielle Brown. The book's author profile reads, Danielle Brown currently lives in New England, teaching school, writing books, and avoiding men. The copyright to the book is credited to Brown. It was in 1996 that Brown quit the teaching profession to become a full-time writer. His book, Digital Fortress, was published in the year 1998. His wife did much of the book's promotion, writing press releases, setting up press interviews, and booking Brown on talk shows. Several months later, Brown and his wife released another comedic tome known as The Bald Book. This time, the book was officially credited to his wife, even though a representative of the publisher has since said that the book is almost entirely written by Brown. Did you know all of that? Didn't think so. And we're just getting started! Initially, Brown's first 3 novels were met with little success. Less than 10,000 copies of each had sold during their first printings. It was his 4th novel, The Da Vinci Code, that went on to become a bestseller, going straight to the top of the New York Times bestseller list in 2003 during its first week of release. It remains one of the most popular books of all time, selling a whopping 81 million copies worldwide by 2009. The Da Vinci Code's success eventually helped drive the sales of Brown's first few books. By the year 2004, all 4 of Brown's novels were on the New York Times list during the very same week, and by 2005, he had made Time magazine's list of 100 most influential people of the year. Similarly, Forbes magazine placed Brown at number 12 on their 2005 Celebrity 100 list, and Brown then estimated his annual income at around $76.5 million. According to a later article published in the Times, the estimated income of Brown after the success of the Da Vinci Code sales was $250 million. The 3rd novel, starring Robert Langdon, The Lost Symbol, was released on September 15th of 2009. The publisher said that during the book's first day, it sold over 1 million in hardcover and ebook versions in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. This led the publisher to print another 600,000 hardcover copies in addition to their 5 million copy first printing. The plot of The Lost Symbol takes place over a period of 12 hours in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. The book also featured the return of the Freemasons and includes a lot of the elements that helped to make the Da Vinci Code the enormous success that it had become. The website that Brown uses for promotions says that the puzzles that are hidden in the book jacket of the Da Vinci Code, which includes 2 references to the crypto sculpture located at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, actually give hints about the sequel. The fourth novel featuring Robert Langdon, entitled Inferno, is a mystery thriller novel that was released on May 14, 2013 by Doubleday. Upon release, it ranked at number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for 11 weeks. During a 2006 interview, Brown said that he has ideas for around 12 more books featuring Robert Langdon. Brown often names his characters after real people in his life. Robert Langdon is named after John Langdon, the artist who created the ambigrams used for the Angels and Demons novel and compact disc. Camerlengo Carlo Ventresca is named after Anna Claire Day cartoonist friend Carla Ventresca. In the Vatican archives, Langdon talks about a wedding of 2 people named who are named Dick and Connie. Those are also the names of his parents. The wonderful world of books never disappoints. Let's keep talking. Robert Langdon's editor, Jonas Falkman, is named after Brown's real-life editor, Jason Kaufman. Brown also said that characters were based on a New Hampshire librarian and a French teacher at Exeter, André Vernet. Cardinal Aldo Baggia in Angels and Demons is named after Aldo Baggia, instructor of modern languages at Phillips Exeter Academy. Doubleday published Brown's 7th book and 5th book in the Robert Langdon series, entitled Origin, on October 3rd of 2017. So, why Da Vinci? What was his code? To answer that, let's take a closer look at the man himself. Da Vinci's first name was actually a lot longer. Leonardo di Sepero da Vinci is thought to have been born on either April 14th or 15th of the year 1452, and he died on May 5th of 1519. He was more commonly known just simply as Leonardo da Vinci, and was an Italian polymath of the Renaissance period whose areas of interest and expertise included drawing, invention, sculpture, painting, architecture, music, science, engineering, mathematics, literature, geology, anatomy, astronomy, paleontology, cartography, and finally, botany. Da Vinci has been referred to as many things since his time, including being the father of iconology, paleontology, and architecture. He is widely considered to be one of the greatest painters who has ever lived, even though only about 15 of his paintings have survived the years. Da Vinci was born out of wedlock to a notary named Piero da Vinci and a peasant woman whose name was Caterina, in Vinci, a region of Florence, Italy. Wow, bet you're glad you joined Darla's book club now, aren't you? Let's keep this discussion going. Leonardo was schooled in the studio of Andrea del Verrocchio, a renowned Italian painter. Leonardo is world-renowned as a painter, but he's so much more than that. Of all his works and accomplishments, it's the Mona Lisa that is the most famous, and it's become known as the most popular portrait ever made. Another one of Da Vinci's masterpieces, The Last Supper, depicted the last meal Jesus had with his disciples, is the most reproduced religious painting of all time. Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man drawing is widely regarded as a cultural icon in and of itself. His oil painting Salvator Mundi was recently sold for $400.3 million at a Christie's auction in New York on November 15th of 2017. A world record, this is the highest price ever paid for a work of art. Together with his notebooks that are home to scientific diagrams, sketches, and his candid thoughts about art, Leonardo's paintings and preparatory drawing compose a contribution to later generations of artists that is rivaled only by that of his contemporary Michelangelo. Da Vinci had pure, raw talent, as evidenced by the fact that he had no formal academic training. Many scholars and historians regard Da Vinci as a prime example of the Renaissance man, or universal genius. An individual of feverishly inventive imagination and unquenchable curiosity, Da Vinci is widely considered to be one of the most diversely talented individuals ever to walk the earth. Art historian Helen Gardner has said that the depth and scope of his interests were without precedent in recorded human history, and his mind and personality seem to us superhuman, while the man himself mysterious and remote. Aren't book clubs the best? I love spending time talking about them, when I'm not reading, of course. Now our discussion continues. Here we go! Leonardo has been championed for his technological ingenuity. He conceptualized a distinct type of armored fighting vehicle, flying machines, an adding machine, concentrated solar power, and the double hull. Talk about a visionary. Unfortunately, few of his designs were built or even feasible during his lifetime because the modern scientific approaches to engineering and metallurgy were only in their infancy during the Renaissance period. However, a few of his smaller inventions entered the world of manufacturing unheralded, such as a machine for testing the tensile strength of wire and an automated bobbin winder. Da Vinci is also, at times, credited with the inventions of the helicopter, the tank, and the parachute. Leonardo had also made substantial discoveries in civil engineering, anatomy, optics, hydrodynamics, and geology, but he never published his findings, so they had little to no direct influence on subsequent science. Leonardo was a rock star of the Renaissance, and his fame within his own lifetime was so great that at one point the King of France, Francis I, carried him away like a trophy, and was said to have supported him during his old age. It is said that Francis's love was so great for Da Vinci that he held him in his arms as he died. To this day, there's still a ton of interest in Leonardo and his work. It has never diminished. Crowds still line up to see his best-known works of art. There are t-shirts that bear his most famous drawing, and writers the world over continue to hail him as a genius while speculating about his private life and what someone so intelligent may have believed in. On the 500th anniversary of Da Vinci's death, the Louvre in Paris arranged for the largest ever single exhibit of his work entitled Leonardo. The event took place between November of 2019 and February of 2020. The exhibit included over 100 paintings, drawings, and notebooks. 11 of the paintings which Da Vinci completed in his lifetime were included at the exhibit, and 5 of them are actually owned by the Louvre. The Mona Lisa was not included in the exhibit because of its great demand among general visitors to the Louvre. Her famed smile remains on display in its own gallery. The Vitruvian Man, however, was on display after a legal battle with its owner, the Gallery dell'Accademia in Venice. The painting of Salvator Mundi was not included because its Saudi owner did not agree to lease the work that they paid handsomely for. The tomb of Leonardo da Vinci can be found at the Chapel of St. Hubert at the Château d'Amboise, where a plaque hangs that explains that the remains interred are only presumed to be those of da Vinci. A good portion of the Collegiate Church of St. Florentine at the Château d'Amboise, where Leonardo was buried, was damaged during the French Revolution, and that led to the church's demolition in the year 1802. Some of the graves were destroyed in the process, scattering the bones of the deceased who were buried on the grounds and thereby leaving the exact whereabouts of Da Vinci's remains the subject of much debate. During an 1863 excavation of the site, Fine Arts Inspector General Arsène Houssaye found a partially complete skeleton wearing a bronze ring on one finger, some white hair, and stone fragments bearing the inscriptions E.O., A.R., D.U.S., and V.I.N.C., interpreted as forming Leonardus Vinci. That's a good point, don't you think? It's like they say, you can't judge a book by its cover. This story keeps getting better and better. A silver shield found near the bones depicts a beardless Francis I. This also corresponds to the king's appearance during Leonardo's lifetime, and the skull's inclusion of 8 teeth corresponds to someone of approximately the appropriate age. The unusually large skull led Houssaye to believe that he had located Leonardo's remains, although he thought that the skeleton seemed too short. However, historians believe Da Vinci to have been 5 feet 7 inches tall, so the found skeleton may well be Leonardo's. The remains, with the exception of the bronze ring and lock of hair which Houssaye kept for himself, were transported to Paris inside of a lead box, where the skull was allegedly presented to Napoleon III before being returned to the Château d'Amboise and reinterred at the Chapel of St. Hubert in 1874. A new memorial tombstone was added by a sculptor named Francesco La Monaca in the 30s. A plaque above the tomb reads that the remains are only thought to be those of Leonardo. A theory exists that the folding of the skeleton's right arm over the head may be in line with the paralysis of Leonardo's right hand. In the year 2016, it was announced that DNA tests would be performed to determine whether the attribution is correct. The DNA of the remains will be matched up to that of the samples that were collected from Leonardo's work and his half-brother Domencio's descendants. It may also be sequenced. The lock of hair and ring, now in a private United States collection, were displayed in Vinci beginning on May 2nd of 2019, the 500th anniversary of the artist's death. Brown's 2003 mystery thriller The Da Vinci Code was the second novel in which you can find the character of Robert Langdon. The first time that Langdon appeared was in Brown's year 2000 novel Angels and Demons. The Da Vinci Code follows the exploits of symbologist Robert Langdon and cryptologist Sophie Nouveau, following a killing in the Louvre Museum in Paris. The murder causes them to get involved in a struggle between the Opus Dei and the Priory of Sion over the likelihood of Jesus Christ having been Mary Magdalene's companion. The book takes a look at an alternative religious history. The central plot point of said history is that the Merovingian kings of France were descended from the bloodline of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. These notions were originally put forth in Clive Prince's 1997 book, The Templar Revelation, and several books by Margaret Starbird. The novel also calls back to 1982's The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. However, Brown has said that it was not implemented during his own research. The Da Vinci Code ignited a popular interest in guesswork pertaining to the legend of the Holy Grail, as well as Mary Magdalene's part in the history of Christianity. Given the subject matter, the book has been seriously put down by a lot of Christian denominations who think of it as an attack on the Catholic Church. Not only that, but the book has also been met with consistent criticism for its scientific and historic inaccuracies. Nonetheless, the book went on to become a bestseller all over the world, and as of 2009, it had sold over 80 million copies. I am just a lover of words, aren't you? I think they call it a logo file, but this isn't all about me. Let's learn some more! In November of 2004, Random House published a special illustrated edition of the Da Vinci Code with 160 illustrations. In the year 2006, a successful film adaptation starring Tom Hanks as Robert Langdon was put out by Columbia Pictures. A lot of critics took issue with the amount of research Brown did while he was writing his story. Laura Miller of the New York Times branded the book as rank nonsense, based on a notorious hoax and bogus. According to Miller, the book is based heavily on the fabrications of Pierre Plantard, who is believed to have established the Priory of Sion back in the year 1956. Critics accuse Brown of distorting and fabricating history. For instance, author Marcia Ford, who specializes in CBA editing and ghostwriting, memoir, and some genres of secular fiction, said of the books, "Regardless of whether you agree with Brown's conclusions, it's clear that his history is largely fanciful, which means he and his publisher have violated a long-held, if unspoken, agreement with the reader. Fiction that purports to present historical facts should be researched as carefully as a non-fiction book would be." Author/journalist Richard A. Baines, who specializes in the area of socio-religious issues, cults, the occult, world religions, the entertainment industry, and pop culture, once wrote, "The most flagrant aspect is not that Dan Brown disagrees with Christianity, but that he utterly warps it in order to disagree with it, to the point of completely rewriting a vast number of historical events. And, making the matter worse, has been Brown's willingness to pass off his distortions as facts with which innumerable scholars and historians agree." The Da Vinci Code begins with a claim by Dan Brown that the Priory of Sion, a French secret society founded in 1099, is a real organization. That contention is widely disputed. The Priory of Sion is frequently thought of to be a hoax that was perpetrated in the year 1956 by a French droughtman named Pierre Plantard. Brown also claimed that all descriptions of artwork, architecture, documents, and secret rituals in this novel are accurate, but this claim has been long argued by many academic scholars who are experts in various areas. Dan Brown himself talks about the notion of some of the more controversial aspects of his story being facts on his website. Brown states that the fact page at the beginning of the book mentions only documents, rituals, organization, artwork, and architecture, but not any of the ancient theories that are discussed by his fictional characters. Brown goes on to state that interpreting those ideas is left to the reader, and that it is my belief that some of the theories discussed by these characters may have merit. And finally, the secret behind the Da Vinci Code was too well documented and significant for me to dismiss. In the year 2003, while out promoting the book, Brown was questioned in interviews about what parts of the history he wrote about in his books had actually happened. Brown answered, absolutely all of it. During an interview with CNN's Martin Savage in the year 2003, he was asked again how much of the historical background he wrote of was true. Brown replied once more, 99% is true. The background is all true. During an ABC News special with journalist Elizabeth Fargus, Brown was asked if the book would have been any different if he'd written it as a non-fiction novel. Brown answered, I don't think it would have. In the year 2005, UK TV personality Tony Robinson narrated and edited a comprehensive refutation of the primary contentions of Dan Brown, as well as those of Richard Ley, Michael Begant, and Henry Lincoln, who wrote the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, in the television special The Real Da Vinci Code, which aired on British TV Channel 4. The program presented in-depth interviews with a lot of the main protagonists, in which were cited by Brown as absolute fact in his book. That certainly does put things into context, doesn't it? Let's keep these words flowing and continue with the discussion. Arnaud de Sade, son of Gerard de Sade, declared conclusively that his father and Plantard had fabricated the existence of the Pueri de Sion, which is the very foundation of the Jesus bloodline theory. Sade stated that, frankly, it was piffle, before going on to note that the concept of a descendant of Jesus was also a detail of the 1999 Kevin Smith comedy Dogma. The earliest record of this theory is due to the 13th century chronicler and Cistercian monk Peter of Vaudecernay, who insisted that Cathars believed that the earthly Jesus Christ had a relationship with Mary Magdalene and that she served as his mistress. As for the good Christ, he was believed to be incorporeal and existed spiritually in the body of Paul. The show, The Real Da Vinci Code, also cast doubt on the Rosslyn Chapel association with the Grail and on other related stories, such as the alleged landing of Mary Magdalene in France. According to the Da Vinci Code, the Roman Emperor Constantine I suppressed Gnosticism because it portrayed Jesus as purely human. The novel's argument is as follows. Constantine wanted Christianity to act as a unifying religion for the Roman Empire. He thought Christianity would appeal to pagans only if it featured a demigod similar to pagan heroes. According to the Gnostic Gospels, Jesus was merely a human prophet, not a demigod. Therefore, to change Jesus' image, Constantine destroyed the Gnostic temples and promoted the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which portrays Jesus as divine or semi-divine. But Gnosticism did not portray Jesus as merely human. All Gnostic writings depict Christ as purely divine, his human body being a mere illusion. Gnostic sects saw Christ this way because they regarded matter as evil and therefore believed that a divine spirit would never have taken on a material body. The book received both positive and negative reviews from critics, and it has been the subject of negative appraisals concerning its portrayal of history. Its writing and historical accuracy were reviewed negatively by The New Yorker, Salon.com, and Maclean's. Janet Maslin of The New York Times said that one word concisely conveys the kind of extreme enthusiasm with which this riddle-filled, code-breaking, exhilaratingly brainy thriller can be recommended. That word is wow. The author is Dan Brown, a name you will want to remember. In this gleefully erudite suspense novel, Mr. Brown takes the format he has been developing through 3 earlier novels and fine-tunes it to a blockbuster perfection. David Lazarus of the San Francisco Chronicle said, "This story has so many twists, all satisfying, most unexpected, that it would be a sin to reveal too much of the plot in advance. Let's just say that if this novel doesn't get your pulse racing, you need to check your meds." While interviewing Umberto Eco in a 2008 issue of the Paris Review, Lila Azam Zangana characterized the Da Vinci Code as a bizarre little offshoot of Eco's novel Foucault's Pendulum. In response, Eco remarked, "Dan Brown is a character from Foucault's Pendulum. I invented him. He shares my character's fascinations. The world conspiracy of Rosicrucians, Masons, and Jesuits. The role of the Knights Templar, the Hermetic secret, the principle that everything is connected. I suspect Dan Brown might not even exist." The book appeared on a 2010 list of 101 best books ever written, which was derived from a survey of more than 15,000 Australian readers. Salman Rushdie said during a lecture, "Do not start me on the Da Vinci Code, a novel so bad that it gives bad novels a bad name." Stephen Fry has referred to Brown's writings as complete loose stool water and arse gravy of the worst kind. In a live chat on June 14, 2006, he clarified, "I just loathe all those books about the Holy Grail and Masons and Catholic conspiracies and all that body tribble. I mean, there's so much more that's interesting and exciting in art and in history. It plays to the worst and laziest in humanity, the desire to think the worst of the past and the desire to feel superior to it in some fatuous way." Stephen King likened Dan Brown's work to jokes for the John, calling such literature the intellectual equivalent of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Nothing like curling up in bed with a good book, don't you think? Just warms my heart and jumpstarts my mind. Let's keep discussing this. The New York Times, while reviewing the movie based on the book, called the book Dan Brown's best-selling primer on how not to write an English sentence. The New York reviewer Anthony Lane refers to it as unmitigated junk and decries the crumbling coarseness of the style. Linguist Jeffrey Pullum and others posted several entries critical of Dan Brown's writing at Language Log, calling Brown one of the worst prose stylists in the history of literature, and saying Brown's writing is not just bad, it is staggeringly, clumsily, thoughtlessly, almost ingeniously bad. Roger Ebert described it as a potboiler written with little grace and style, although he said it did supply an intriguing plot. In his review of the film National Treasure, whose plot also involves ancient conspiracies and treasure hunts, he wrote, "I should read a potboiler like the Da Vinci Code every once in a while, just to remind myself that life is too short to read books like the Da Vinci Code." Author Louis Perdue alleged that Brown plagiarized from 2 of his novels, The Da Vinci Legacy, originally published in 1983, and Daughter of God, published originally in 2000. He sought to block distribution of the book and film. However, Judge George Daniels of the U.S. District Court in New York ruled against Perdue in 2005, saying that a reasonable average lay observer would not conclude that the Da Vinci Code is substantially similar to Daughter of God, and that any slightly similar elements are on the level of generalized or otherwise unprotectable ideas. Perdue appealed. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the original decision, saying Mr. Perdue's arguments were without merit. In early 2006, Michael Bagant and Richard Lay filed suit against Brown's publishers, Random House. They alleged that significant portions of the Da Vinci Code were plagiarized from Holy Blood, Holy Grail, violating their copyright. Brown confirmed during the court case that he named the principal Grail expert of his story, Lay Teabing, an anagram of Bagant Lay, after the 2 plaintiffs. In reply to the suggestion that Henry Lincoln was also referred to in the book, since he has medical problems resulting in a severe limp, like the character of Lay Teabing, Brown stated that he was unaware of Lincoln's illness and the correspondence was a coincidence. Since Bacon and Lay had presented their conclusions as historical research, not as fiction, Mr. Justice Peter Smith, who presided over the trial, deemed that a novelist must be free to use these ideas in a fictional context, and ruled against Bacon and Lay. Smith also hid his own secret code in his written judgment, in the form of seemingly random italicized letters in the 71-page document, which apparently spell out a message. Smith indicated he would confirm the code if someone broke it. After losing before the High Court on July 12, 2006, they then appealed, unsuccessfully, to the Court of Appeal. In April 2006, Mikhail Anikin, a Russian scientist and art historian working as a senior researcher at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, stated the intention to bring a lawsuit against Dan Brown, maintaining that he was the one who coined the phrase used as the book's title, and one of the ideas regarding the Mona Lisa used in its plot. Anikin interprets the Mona Lisa to be a Christian allegory consisting of two images, one of Jesus Christ that comprises the image's right half, one of the Virgin Mary that forms its left half. According to Anikin, he expressed this idea to a group of experts from the Museum of Houston during a 1988 René Marguerite exhibit at the Hermitage, and when one of the Americans requested permission to pass it along to a friend, Anikin granted the request on condition that he be credited in any book using this interpretation. Anikin eventually compiled his research into Leonardo da Vinci, or Theology on Canvas, a book published in 2000, but the Da Vinci Code, published 3 years later, makes no mention of Anikin and instead asserts that the idea in question is a well-known opinion of a number of scientists. Isn't that incredible? There's so much to talk about, and we still got more to discuss. Can I stop for a moment and just say, I love books! Okay, I'm sorry, let's continue. In 2006, Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code was released as a film by Columbia Pictures with director Ron Howard. It was widely anticipated and launched the 2006 Cannes Film Festival, though it received overall poor reviews. It currently has a 24% rating at the film review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, derived from 165 negative reviews of the 214 counted. It was later listed as one of the worst films of 2006 on Ebert and Roeper, but also the second highest grossing film of the year, pulling in $750 million worldwide. Brown was listed as one of the executive producers of the film The Da Vinci Code, and also created additional codes for the film. One of his songs, Fiano, which Brown wrote and performed, was listed as part of the film's soundtrack. In the film, Brown and his wife can be seen in the background of one of the early book signing scenes. Dan Brown looks briefly into the camera at timecode next to his wife, but both are a bit out of focus, so it's hard to catch when you watch the movie. The next film, Angels and Demons, was released on May 15, 2009, with Howard and Hanks returning. It, too, garnered mostly negative reviews, though critics were kinder to it than its predecessor. As of July 2013, it has a 30% meta rating at Rotten Tomatoes. Filmmakers expressed interest in adapting The Lost Symbol into a film as well. The screenplay was written by Danny Strong, with pre-production expected to begin in 2013. According to a January 2013 article in Los Angeles Times, the final draft of the screenplay was due sometime in February, but in July 2013, Sony Pictures announced that they would instead adapt Inferno for an October 14, 2016 release date, with Ron Howard as director, David Coop adapting the screenplay, and Tom Hanks reprising his role as Robert Langdon. Imagine Entertainment is set to produce a television series based on Digital Fortress to be written by Josh Golden and Rachel Abramowitz. So after all of that, you're probably wondering, does the Da Vinci Code have anything at all to do with Leonardo da Vinci? The answer is both yes and no. Brown's entire book is a made-up account of what happens when a cryptographer uncovers the hidden truth that Leonardo da Vinci used his paintings to relay the information presented by instances in the Holy Bible that were kept quiet by Catholics. In particular, it is claimed that when Da Vinci painted the Last Supper, he included Mary Magdalene in the painting, though it was thought to have been Judas. According to the book, Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and had a child when he was crucified. Because of this, Christ actually has descendants that are currently roaming the planet. Of course, none of this is true, right? Or is that just what they want us to believe? The Da Vinci Code and the exploits of its star, Robert Langdon, will no doubt continue to both perplex people and inspire conversation. At the end of the day, that's all any creative can hope for, as the worst reaction to any bit of artwork is silence. Given the controversies surrounding the story and Brown's sequels, one thing is for certain: silence will never be an option. And that just about wraps up this one. What did you think? I had an absolute blast talking to you today. I hope you'll join me for more fascinating discussion about books, books, and more books. I'm so glad you have become a member of Darla's Book Club. Feel free to hop on the couch and talk novels with me anytime. I'll see you soon. After all, tomorrow is another day.